Yeah, I think Ratnesh is back now.
Yeah.
So Ratnesh, I think we lost you on the first point itself.
Okay. Okay.
So you had just mentioned the child now discovers that punctuality is coming on time. So after that, we lost you.
Okay. And I guess I kept on talking.
So we saw two more points from before. So,
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I was saying that's the awareness stage where the child becomes aware there's something called as punctuality. And then, but by itself doesn't mean that the child will start coming on time. Okay. The child says, yeah, there's something called as coming on time, but how does it matter? And then maybe the child develops an understanding as to why is it important enough to come on time. Maybe because the child is punished, or maybe the child is rewarded, or maybe the child starts thinking, oh, that's the way we all get to do an activity together, and so on. So once the child gets some importance, or gives some importance, or gets some understanding, then the child starts thinking, I want to come in time, so I want to, let's say, sleep early or get up early or change my route or pack my tiffin in the night or whatever. Some strategies the child comes up with. And as the child starts kind of living those strategies or doing those strategies over and over again, it's over a period of time that it just becomes an habit for the child. Now realize that this isn't constant. For example, if a child's understanding is that if I am late and I'll be punished. So to avoid punishment, the child is coming on time. But let's say later on in life, there is no punishment, as in the child after school, let's say in college, there is no punishment, or maybe after college, there is no punishment. Then the child may even not give it so much importance to come on time or be punctual, and hence the punctuality drops. You know what I mean? So the habit of mind, or the way the child operates, changes based on, obviously the key thing is understanding. Now sometimes the strategy becomes so much ingrained that you just keep on doing the strategy, in which case, even though you may not value it, but it just becomes a habit, and that's how you continue, which is possible. But in most cases, it depends on, am I aware, and then more importantly, do I really give importance to something? Why should I do this? Let me give you one more interesting example. This was related to my own childhood. When I was a child, my mother thought that I need to be organized, especially in terms of time. So I should make timetable. So she would tell me to make timetable of my study and all that, and I would reluctantly make one. And within 2 3 days, I was never following the timetable, and then the whole thing will start all over again. She will again tell me to make a timetable, or rather scold me to make a timetable, and reluctantly I will again make a timetable, and then obviously I would not follow it, and it went on till finally she gave up at one point of time. So if you look at it, you realize that what she was pushing me was on a strategy without me having any understanding as to why am I doing it. And because it was only a strategy, not an understanding, it never really worked. Now, somehow, as parents, we a lot of times we tend to focus on strategy. We give children our strategies. This is how it works best, man. But remember, that's just a strategy. By itself, yeah, maybe the child will take it. Maybe it will also work for the child. I'm not denying that. But finally, unless we have an understanding about why we are doing something, the strategy by itself is of not much value. And even if I get an understanding, then possibly my own strategies will work better for me rather than somebody else's, let's say my parents' strategy. So that's the other uh, interesting aspect of how we relate to uh, to this with children. So my whole idea of the previous exercise was to give you, hopefully, an experience of first an awareness. Am I really understanding others? Then give you an understanding about, hey, why will it be important to understand others' point of view? And then even try some strategies of how can I understand others' point of view, provided obviously you give it enough importance. You say, yes, this is of importance to me. So that's a quick uh, overview of where or what I wanted you to experience. Your thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I think this connects a lot with what we did earlier about really being with the other person, like empathy and that understanding part, understanding their needs, their feelings, so being with the child rather than for the child. That's what's coming up for me as you share now.
Okay. Though here the word understand is more about I understand the importance of something. I understand punctuality as an example, or I understand organizing. So as a child, do I really understand something, or I just do it as a strategy? For example, again, let me give you a very common example. Parents push their child to say thank you, and to when people give, say beta, say thank you, and a lot of children are very reluctant to say thank you, because thank you is a strategy. The word thank you is a strategy, but they still not really understood the importance of, let's say, showing gratitude. So the key word there is gratitude. Have they really understood it? I don't know. And without understanding, we are pushing a strategy. Now, in itself, nothing wrong with it. I'm just trying to make ourselves aware that we are pushing a strategy without the child understanding why am I doing it. Yeah. Could we do it the other way around? Could we first help them understand it, and once they have understood it, then possibly they will come up with their own strategy. Maybe they don't need to say thank you. Maybe they have other ways of communicating their gratitude. So that's I'm just giving you more examples to see if you connect with this whole flow of how we operate. More thoughts, questions?
Ratnesh, in your sharing, you mentioned that maybe we tell the child that if you don't come on time, that you'll be punished, or if you come on time, you'll be rewarded. That's one way to take it, and later the child understands the true purpose of coming on time. So. Should we wait for the child to understand this whole um, no, this whole or understand? Should we wait for the child to understand it for himself, or should we nudge him towards it, or should we, initially is the child too young to understand it, and then we form it like a process, and then allow him to understand by himself.
Okay, so that's the rest of the 45 minutes. That's what we are going to talk about. So if we understand it all of this way, then what do we do about it? Yeah, so I would not directly answer that question. I'll say that will unfold in the next 45 minutes, hopefully. So I'll take other questions, and then obviously we'll jump into this. Others? I'm seeing, what I'm also kind of asking you is if you are connecting all of this to the exercise, because that's important in a way, because that was the experience we all went through. We invested a fair amount of time on that to see, hey, are you connecting somewhere there, of becoming aware, hey, I'm convincing, or I'm struggling with my own thoughts rather than understanding other thoughts. Then am I understanding its importance? Then I'm trying some strategies. Did you get that? Did you realize how the operating system works, and we need not even be aware of it. We just work like that, and we say, hey, it's my nature. Well, you can call it your nature, or you can call it your operating system and say, hey, this is how I operate. And do I want to operate like that? Is that something which is giving me value? Do I question myself? And so on and so forth. So
Ratnesh, this came up in one of the other discussions. One of the parent was mentioning that his child didn't like or didn't wanted to talk to the parent because the child always felt that the parents would convince him to do one way or the other. So he liked that part, although it was the right thing, or it was the correct thing that he was trying to convince the child to. But still, the child felt that every conversation was leading to the parent trying to convince the child. So he kind of rejected the idea of having the conversation itself.
Okay. So are you trying to say that if we are on to kind of making them understand what the way we understand it doesn't work, or rather that each one of us is reluctant to just understand the way somebody else understands it, unless I develop my own understanding?
That's where I'm coming from. My challenge is to see how our, when you want, we are not forcing the child. We are giving him, these are the things which lead us to what we are trying to tell you. So we are explaining him from our perspective. We are giving him ample analogies and um, um, so we are trying to build a case with facts and probably figures. And so it's like we're trying to inform the child, but the child is not ready to accept it.
Are we
So
informing the child, or are we influencing the child?
we are influencing the child.
Because your choice of word is interesting me. So what would you like to be? Would you like to be informed or influenced?
That's where I'm trying to understand at which point we stop influencing and let the child self-realize it.
Okay. So I would say
in
it's
his
not
initial years, this is
yeah.
what I believe, that we should influence.
So I would say, to me, it's not a 0-1. It's not that influence, either I influence or I inform. It's not 0-1. It's not binary. It's not either or. To me, it's a continuum, and we can co-learn, we can co-create, we can co-question, we can do this whole journey together at every age, irrespective of the age. Forget the age for a moment. Keep that aside. Nobody's young, nobody's old. We are all together. We are all learning. The problem to a large
Sure.
extent is when we start thinking that we are already learned. And because we are learned, we already know the importance of something, we tend to push that. Let's say, push my agenda or my philosophy or my way of, or my habit of mind onto you, rather than right, exploring something together. And then seeing where do we all reach, rather than you reach me. Rather than that, how can we both travel the journey together? Maybe we'll both reach somewhere else.
Sure, Ratnesh. Yeah, I can see that now.
uh, I'm still thinking. I'm not moving ahead, although I would have moved ahead much earlier. But I'm still getting a feeling that I'm still not sure what the exercise did to you. Uh, it obviously had many layers. It had first the topics and then the objective, and now I'm not even talking about the objective. I'm talking about, hey, did I experience my own habits of mind? So I'm still hanging on with that question, and I want more responses. Could you just forget everything else? Forget the objective, forget the topics we discussed, forget everything. Could you get an experience of your own operating system or your own habits of mind? Could you get that without giving it a term? You can call it whatever you want to call it. But could you realize that there's a way in which I think, I do, I respond, I receive, I listen, I exist. At least for that time. Well, I may change that the next minute, that's okay. But for that half an hour or 1 hour that we did that exercise, some thoughts, whatever you're feeling. If you're saying I'm lost, let's just say that. Okay, I feel lost. This isn't making any sense to me.
Yeah, Ratnesh, during the exercise, I could see how my opinions were playing a role in, as I was listening to people on the other side, like see how my beliefs or opinions were shaping my response, and then create a reaction, whether like, oh, I agree, or how can you think like that? I could see that operating as well. And your invitation to, understand another's point of view would make me pause from that pattern, like my automatic thinking, and say, hey, can I put that aside for a moment and just really try and maybe be with this other person and see what they're saying, see their window or whatever. So that I observed that happening.
Okay. Others? So my idea was only to give you this experience of how we are operating, how we can operate differently, and obviously for that we need to do something different. That's all. That's all that exercise was. Nothing. It didn't want to do anything else.
Ratnesh, the moment it becomes a habit, we hold on to it. See, this is the journey we have taken to make it a habit, but understanding is one of the key points in that journey. But that understanding can be limited by what we have understood at that point of time. Whereas when it becomes a habit, we hold on to that, saying that I've understood it and then I've strategized it and I've made it a habit. So it becomes very difficult to change it. So that's where it kind of it binds, or it doesn't allow us to be free or free to explore or free to open up.
Well, both yes and no. I agree with your thought process. The only thing I would keep aside is that it becomes difficult. To me, it doesn't become difficult. The key word, the key step is step number 2. The moment your understanding changes, if you start giving importance to something else, then all your strategies will change. And the moment your strategies will change, your habits will also change. Which is where I was giving you my childhood experience. The key point was, do I have an understanding or an importance? I'm using those words again interchangeably for step number 2. So if what I'm giving importance to changes, then all my strategies also follow suit. Then I start looking for strategies. So to give you an example from our exercise, if my strategy was to convince others, if my understanding was that, oh, if this is a topic, if others are saying something which I don't agree with, let me make them agree to my point of view. Let me argue with them. Right? That's one strategy, right? Because I hold on to my views as very important. Now, as Shayu said, if I let go of that for some time, and then I get that others' views are far more important than my views, now suddenly I have a different perspective, and now I'll start coming up with different strategies, and hence I will change my habits. And that's a constant process. It's not something which is difficult or easy. It is something we all do all the time. We are constantly changing, evaluating our own understanding, and based on that changing our strategies and hence changing our habits. which I'm sure all of us, if we map our habits from childhood to now, we would see so many things changing. They did not change because we consciously changed the habit. They changed because we changed the understanding that we had. We started understanding something very differently. It could be something as mundane as, let's say, using plastic. Now, somebody may use plastic, not think much about it, but one fine day I may get an understanding. Oh, using plastic is terrible for environment. Now, if I think of that as important, then my strategies will change. Then I'll start looking for non-plastic options, and then my habits will also change. Let's say my shopping habits will change. I'll start carrying a shopping bag instead of asking for a plastic cover. So I'm just giving you a very simple example of how the moment my understanding changes, my strategies and habits change fairly automatically. So it's not actually about it being difficult or easy, but it's more about, hey, what do I value? What is important to me? What is my understanding? It's about this. Okay, so let's move a little forward. Let's see, maybe that together will make a little more sense of this whole thing. So this is something that I had asked you to do as part of your homework. So if you're ready with these three characteristics which you would like to see in your child, then for your child to be a successful and happy individual in his life, then I would like you to type those three characteristics in the chat window. Let's do this, and then maybe we will get little more clarity about habits of mind. Okay, so let me pull up a whiteboard to put this all up. Okay, come on, others, just type in. Even if you're not getting all three, yeah, you can keep typing one. Okay, Priya, I've not typed contented because my question is, what will lead a child to be happy, contented, successful individual? So characteristics which will help the child. Okay, others, come on, start typing. Whatever characteristics you think will help. And even if yours are already on the screen, that's okay. You can just type that out. Okay. Yeah, Prashant, I'll comment on your remark in just a little while. Okay. I hope everybody's just limiting themselves to 3 and not more than 3, because I know we may like to have a long list. Positive. Okay. Okay, we can kind of pause here. Now, I've just taken a collage of what can be called as success characteristics, or these could also, some of these could also be habits of mind, or things that we operate with. And as I said, I was asking 3, but it need not be limited to 3 in life. But right now, let's just limit ourselves to 3. My next question is, just one moment. I'll come back to the list in just a while. So I know this comparison is little, somebody can say, why are you comparing this with academics? But let's still compare it just for the sake of it. And I'll come back to it, why I want you to compare it with academics. But let's just say, how important are these for success or happiness in life? More important, equally important, less important? What do you think? Again, just use the chat window quickly to share your view. Not just your list, in general, when you see these lists, and as I said, your list could be different, but that's okay. How important are these as compared to academics? Equally important, more important, less important? Okay, so some of you say more, some of you say equal. Either ways, at least nobody's saying less importance. So more or equal. The next obvious question is, okay, so if these are more important or equally important, what are we doing about it? How are we developing it? What are we doing to, as Prashant was saying, not to kind of ensure that they are there like etched in stone, not like that, but how are we helping them? How are we supporting them? How are we creating an environment where these can be developed by the child, or the child develops these characteristics in himself or herself over a period of time? What are we doing about it? So I want you to share your ways of what are you doing? Or if you say, hey, I'm not doing consciously anything about it, then what would you like to do? So either what are you doing or what you would like to do to develop these. I'm assuming you would like to do something about them. Now, you can obviously argue the case where you can say, I don't need to do anything about them. I just need to focus on other things, and these will get developed by themselves. That's fine by me. So I want to hear what you're doing about it. Yeah. Okay, so Prashant, you can come on mic. You don't need to type that long. I think the typing part is over. Okay, so
yeah, because I don't know, there was a noise in the background. So.
Okay. So one way you're saying is,
so about politeness, we give a lot of gyan. So something we should look at.
Okay.
Politeness, we give a lot of gyan. Not so sure whether we are polite. Good examples for being polite. But somehow I'm sure that politeness is very important for being successful.
Sure. So whatever you think is important is absolutely fine. There's no argument over those. So one way is to give gyan. The other way you said is we use his thinking to encourage proactive. So in a way, you are saying whenever he is being proactive, you allow him to be proactive, or you give him space
Right.
to use his own proactiveness.
Yes. Like
Yeah.
for instance, today the carpet was broken. He came and he said, "I want to put a cellophane tape." So he put there, and we simply use it.
All right. So we give
So he
opportunity.
notices a problem
Yeah.
and solves
Yeah.
it.
So I'm generalizing it to one way could be to let the child use his HOM. Now I'm obviously using the term HOM for habits of mind. So I'm assuming these are
Right.
habits of mind, or at least some of them are.
Yes.
Some of them are important habits of mind for you. So you use whatever his habit of mind rather than yours. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
More ways in which I'm asking everybody, more ways in which we are developing these, because we can learn from each other. We can say, hey, this guy is doing like this, I can also do like this, because this is important. Most of you said that this is more important. If this is more important, let's spend some time thinking, hey, how am I going to develop these?
Would say
I,
by
I
okay, Chetan, you can continue.
Sure. I typed in being sensitive. I think one way we are trying is to, have a reverence to the objects that we use, even in the relationship between the husband and wife and with the child. Um, we we try to um, acknowledge the indifferences. Whenever we have an indifference, we acknowledge it, and then we again.
Are you saying that you exhibit the habit of mind so that the child gets to see it in action?
But yeah, it's not only for the sake of it's not only for the sake of giving gyan to the child, but we are actually living that way. We are
Yes. Okay. So I would say
that's
living the HOM. Right. So whatever when we live in HOM, we automatically give it importance. Yes. So that is one. More thoughts? How are you developing these?
It's like living your like we have our own passions in our family. I mean, my husband and me, we both have a different passion. So
Mm-hmm.
we follow it, we work towards it, we spend time on it, we spend money on it. So
Mm-hmm.
we have our sincere efforts and we're working on it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how we show our children that the same can be attained to whatever passion or whatever hobby you can carry forward of your choice. So
Okay.
something like hardworking and sincere can apply to anything, like
Sure.
something like
Sure.
that.
Sure. So again, you are living the HOM, or you're kind of doing it by example.
Yes.
Right. Though I'm always very personally very scared of this. Uh, um, keep telling children, don't follow me and my example. um, yeah, it puts a lot of performance pressure. Okay. More thoughts?
I don't have a specific example, but like
Mhm.
creating experiences where they have to exercise these. It could be doing a project together. It could be building something. It could be reading a book.
Right.
Anything.
Yeah. Okay. So creating experiences, which could also tie in with what Prashant was saying. If the experience comes up, also letting him experiencing it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one is we can literally manufacture experiences. And the other is when a situation does arise, by luck, we can actually allow the child to, to do it his way, use
Yeah.
his habit of mind. Yeah.
And almost if we're looking at like qualities for life, then these are qualities that would be the fabric of almost how they approach everything. Or
Sure.
so
That's why
we
they're called
would,
operating system.
right.
Yeah, that's why they're so important. More thoughts, more experiences. How else are you doing it? I mean, as I said, none of this is a beautiful list, and we can add more to that list without really knocking off. So Prashant, you don't have to be so defensive about Gyan. I mean, that's all right. Meaning, there's nothing wrong or right about one way of doing it. So Gyan is fine. And so are other options. But let's see if we can increase that list rather than say this is better or this is not so good. No, that's not the point.
One way we are trying to do it is through exposure to very different kind of things, that some things that they have done before and some that they have not done before. For example, we went for a Indian classical music concert and took the children along just to expose them to that. So, and we had a conversation with them. You may like it or you may not like it, and that is fine, whether you like it or you don't like it. But let's just go see how we feel about it. And yeah, so exposure.
Rashid, the exposure is more of a content than really of a habit of mind. So the content is music in this case, or it could be another food or another culture or another craft or another language. But those are not operating systems. Those are things that exist, and you may want the child to so exposure is something we'll possibly in more detail talk in context of intelligences. How do we expose the child to different, let's say in this case you're exposing the child to different kind of music to develop musical intelligence. But in itself, that by itself is not about the habit of minds or the operating system. I hope you're able to differentiate between the content and the way we operate. Unless you were trying to say something else and I missed it.
No. I'm saying this only, but I think I'm not really able to get this difference very clearly. So maybe I'll just listen to everyone else, and if I still don't understand, I'll check in again.
Okay, maybe as I said, you will get more clarity when we also do the multiple intelligence session, which is the next one. Because that's the content part. What do I choose to work with? Do I ride a horse, or do I listen to a music, or do I paint, or do I write a poetry? What do I choose to do? But in whatever I choose to do, I could be proactive, explorative, innovative, spirit of discovery, sensitive, compassionate, respectful, creative, polite, independent, focused, respectful, persistence. Does that make sense? So all of these things on the blue on the screen, those to me are habits of mind. They operate universally, irrespective of what I am doing. I could be throwing muck at you, and still I could be very sensitive and persistent and independent. Or I could be cooking a dish for you, or I could be painting, and I could have all of these. So these are operating systems which are existing all the time. These are not used only when needed. However, the ability to ride a horse you will use only when you have a horse. You know what I mean? Or the ability to appreciate classical music is only when you are listening to music. You're not doing that when you are somewhere else. So content is separate, and how a container is separate. Yeah, the container and the content is operate. Now we are more talking about the container, the person, how the person operates, irrespective of what the person is working with. Which is why these to me are more important than the content per se. As you rightly said, whether the child likes classical music or not, that's not important. But perhaps what is more important is the child respectful, is the child persistent, is the child sensitive, is the child compassionate, is the child focused, is the child whatever is your list. I'm not trying to say you have to follow my list or the list on the screen, but whatever is your list, isn't that list universally important?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
how do we develop these? Again, as Prashant underlined, that we don't need to have a fixed list, but still there would be some list that we would like to work with. Or do we want to leave it? Do we want to leave it on chance? Oh, will my child automatically become persistent, or automatically become proactive, or automatically become sensitive or compassionate? Will it happen automatically? Maybe, maybe not. Do I want to leave it? Do I want to do something about it? Do I want to be proactive? In the sense, do I want to do something about it?
Okay.
And
so
that
we are looking at.
Yeah,
sorry, you finish.
No,
you finish.
Go ahead.
No, so we are looking at two kinds of habits of mind. One habit of mind which we want to develop, whether in ourselves or in children, and some habits of mind that we want to become aware of and understand, and then see, are we okay with that? Is there anything else we can do about it? Like in the exercise that we did, when we had to understand another person's perspective. So
we are looking at
right?
all. No, we're not really. There are no really two categories. There's only one category, and the category is what's important to me as a parent, as an individual. What's important to Rashi? So the request is, or the invitation is, sit down. Maybe not tonight. Tonight is late. Maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Sit down and make up this list. Again, the list need not be rigid, but make up a list of what you think is important. Now, whether the child already has it but not enough, or want to develop it more, and again, it need not be only about child. Do I have it? Do I want to develop it more? Do I want to develop it differently? So it's a whole basket of what we can loosely call as habit of mind, HOMs. And then we start thinking, hey, how do we develop these? And I'm using the word develop in a very broad sense. Develop need not mean that I am at 0 and I need to go to 100. No. It's not like that. It's not a linear journey. But it's like, how do I modify, change, work on myself so that these habits come to the level, or I operate on these levels to the way that I want to operate. Now, to do all of that, the key thing is understanding. Unless a child understands the importance of something, the child isn't going to really do anything with it. That's what I was trying to say, that the understanding is important. Does the child understand why? What is this? What is being proactive? What is being polite? What is being sensitive? What is being compassionate? What is being sincere? What is being persistent? Does the child understand this? And how do we give that understanding? Or rather, do we give that understanding, or does the child develops that understanding? And how does that happen? And those are some of the examples. Some of the ways are there in red. Somebody said we can give gyan. Maybe that's how the child can understand. Or we can let the child use his own habit of mind, and then the child understands it. Or we can live or do that by example, and the child sees that and understands. Or as I think Shayur mentioned, we can create experiences. That's how the child can understand. And I'm inviting more thoughts. How else can we help the child develop these habits of mind? And when I'm saying child develop it, I can also use it for myself. So how can I develop? How can child develop? How can we both develop?
I don't know, maybe this is again a content thing, but like I don't know, telling stories of people who embody these things, like, or reading about them or watching movies about them. So,
okay, so let me add that. Okay, so movies, stories, yes.
yeah, to inspire them and
Sure, sure.
maybe make them aware.
So I'm completely in sync with all the suggestions given, and I'm sure there are more suggestions. The only thing I want to mention is that you realize that for each of these habit of minds, there is the so-called the opposite habit of mind. I can be polite or I can be impolite. Now, when I watch a movie or I hear a story, I can pick up politeness from it, but I can also pick up impoliteness from it. When I see, when I talk about living by, or the child seeing parents and other adults and other children in their surrounding, now they can pick up sincerity or they can also pick up insincerity. Are you with me? So it is equally possible for the child to pick up the HOM that you want or the opposite HOM that you want. And it is very difficult for us to, in a concrete sense, control that. If I tell a story or if I show a movie, for all you know, the child likes the villain better than the hero. How am I ever going to ensure that the child likes the hero, the child likes the inspirer better than the other one? You know what I mean? Which is where
I don't
sorry.
think we can ensure.
Yes, and once we realize that we can't ensure, there's an even better state where we start realizing we don't need to ensure. Why do we need to ensure? Why are we so black and white about it? Why can't we offer the whole continuum to the child? Now, the key to us, and which is what I want to kind of sum up the whole thing, but that's the key, is my suggestion to this list is what is called as reflection. Can we help the child reflect back on the story, on the example, on the situation, on the doing, or on whatever has happened or not happened, or whatever is going on, whether it's a created experience or a natural experience or a story or an incident or a news or whatever. Can we create an open reflection? Can we create a dialogue where we explore something without trying to be right or wrong about it, without trying to be prescriptive about it, without saying that polite is better than impolite, or proactive is better than reactive, or sincere is better than insincere, or whatever, respectful is better than disrespectful, without coming from a standpoint, because that kind of corners the child. Can we invite the child for lots of different kinds of reflections? How would that be when the child develops his or her own understanding based out of 100 reflections rather than 100 lectures? And as I said, the lecture can also be there, but there can be reflection about that lecture. When the child knows that I can voice a different opinion, when I can look at a story or an incident or a doing or a behavior or anything in, and I can think about it, and there is somebody who is inviting me to reflect with me. It could be anything. It could be we went out somewhere, something happened, you know, uh, let's say on the street, something happened. I can come back and reflect about it. Hey, what happened? What I think about it? What do I feel about it? How does it strike to me? And so on and so forth. It can be a beautiful conversation, but it need not be related only to conversation. Conversation is not the only way to reflect. There can be so many ways in which I can reflect back upon things that's happening, stories that I read, movies that I saw, behaviors that I encountered, either mine or others, and so on. And from from that vast array of reflections, I can build my own understanding. And from that understanding, I can build my own strategies. And from my strategies, I build my own habits. So I'm just offering reflection as another way to do it. And not that the others are not there, but adding a whole space for thinking through, because finally we realize that the child has to understand it through his understanding or her understanding, not through my understanding. The child has to build it piece by piece. I'll give you a very cute example. I was asking a group of children, what do you think about responsibility? Somehow that did not come in this list, but that usually comes up in a lot of lists, that I want my child to be a responsible person. Okay, so we were asking children about responsibility and asking them give some examples of how they understand this word responsibility versus irresponsibility. And this child comes up and tells me that, or tells everybody actually, that he kicked that other child because that other child was not doing his work, and hence he was responsible in ensuring that people do their work. And to me that was like, oh wow, right? This child is exploring responsibility. Now you might say, but he kicked him. I said, okay, but that's, if you get on to the kicking part, then you will lose the responsibility part. What do you think about it? Does this child understand responsibility, or is this child on his journey to understand responsibility? What do you think?
So I think he does. He might explore other ways of uh, getting the other kid to do his job. Maybe today he experimented kicking as a way of getting it to, but I think he is probably on it already, knowing that he can be responsible for someone else's performance as well.
Yeah. So Bhavna wants more examples of reflection, but let's take more thoughts first, then we'll come back to that. Yeah, sorry.
Like for instance, this I'm just using it as a very romantic expression, not like I expect the kid to do it, but as this could be a kid who in future might go and kick the elected official to do his job, which most of us don't do today. So that's a way of being responsible.
Yeah, why not? So to me, the moment I start thinking this way, then I don't say that I understand responsibility very well. I say, let's explore this together. Let's understand this together. Somebody else wanted to share.
Ratnesh, I wanted to express a concern that if the child gets to know that by kicking, he's able to get the other child to do his work, he uses it as a strategy. And then that kind of becomes a habit for him that
Sure.
I have understood a way to do it. So
Sure, which is where the reflection comes in. So if today I want to focus on responsibility, or at least right now I want to focus on responsibility, then I don't get on to the kicking part because my focus is something else. But tomorrow or today night or tomorrow or sometime, we can talk about, hey, how do we get others to do things that we want them to do? And then we can discuss, we can reflect back on what are the different strategies we have been trying. So reflection is an endless ongoing process. I'm constantly reflecting on my behavior, others' behavior, my thoughts, my feelings, others' thoughts, others' feelings, and involving at a continuous level everybody to reflect back on whatever we did and whatever we thought and whatever we felt. Which is why it is no more a concern for me, because I know it is just a process, it is a journey. Today he may think of kicking as one way or a preferred way, but we can continuously reflect on it.
Sure.
And if I value the child's own, so let me, if you allow me to tie in or everything. So if I First of all, if I think the child is powerful enough to think, then I don't need to think for him. He can reflect. She can make use of her own power to create her own scenarios. And I also believe that the child is creative enough to be able to pick data, collect data from different experiences, munch over them, and from that munching create her own her own perspectives of life, her own understanding of life. So if you put these three together, that the child has the power, now the child has the creativity, and now the child needs a space to reflect and a companionship to reflect. And as I said, reflection not necessarily verbal enough. Reflection can be done in many ways, and I'll send you some dough on how you can help the child reflect. But those just an indicative list. There can be 100,000 million ways in which we can help the child reflect, or for that matter, already 100,000 ways in which we reflect on anything. I know sometimes we just sit and meditate, sometimes we talk about it, sometimes we write about it, sometimes we draw about it, sometimes we paint about it, sometimes we post an FB post about it, and so on and so forth. We do so many ways of reflecting in our life. Can we invite child to do the same way? Reflect on so many different data points so that the child can use his creativity to create his own solutions, his own understanding, his own habits of mind. So Bhavna, I'm not trying to give you one way or one answer or a list of it. I'll send you some dough on it. The idea is not so much in the ways. That's, I think, is not so important. The more important point is, do I fundamentally believe on the child's being empowered, on the child being creative, and the child can develop his or her own understanding through reflection, and hence can develop his or her own strategies to develop his or her own habits of mind. Now, if we do all of this, then the hows and all, I'm sure you can figure out. I mean, that's no big deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Ratnesh, when we work with a child on reflection, there is won't there be a very high tendency of us trying to guide him in a way we think is the right thing, although it may not be an enforcement, but trying to um, direct him towards realizing what is correct way to do it versus
So
what
I'll
is
give you an
not.
example. I'll give you an
Sure.
example. Just about a month back, there was in Arohi, there were children gossiping about each other, creating false rumors and this that. How it happens between any group of people, not just children, but it was happening between children. So we kind of sat together and we said, okay, so instead of pointing saying you are doing right, you're right, we just wrote the topic on the board: rumors, gossips, backbiting. What do you think about all of these? And somehow children started talking about their experiences. I've done it this way, I've done it that way. And the whole conversation was moving towards very idealistic kind of thing. Children started saying we shouldn't do this, that. And at some point I said, hey, come on, guys. What's life without some bit of rumor, some bit of gossip, some bit of backbiting, some bit of pulling each other? Come on. Don't be so idealistic. Don't be so nicey. Come on, let's have masala in life. So, so in a way, I was just saying the opposite, what you would expect an adult to say. And I'm sure you will now think two times before sending your child to ROE, when Ratnesh is the one who is encouraging people to do more rumors, to do more. Because I felt that there's possibly somewhere a sense that the children are getting that they should say the right things, and I don't want them to say the right thing, because saying the right thing doesn't mean that they will do the right thing. I want them to be free. I want them to consider how even these are spices of life. How we need not be in a sanitized environment where nobody pulls or teases or gossips about anybody. Oh, come on. I don't want to live in such an environment. I want to live in an environment where all the masalas of life are there. And then we enjoy that with the awareness of what is what. So while you are right, we may tend to be righteous, but then we need to be sure what are we doing? Are we coming from a Gyan perspective or the right wrong perspective, or do we value reflection? And if we value reflection, then we are there to listen. We are there to be the mirror, if you remember, from the empowerment session, rather than trying to correct them. I mean, that is one way. The other way is try to mirror them, try to show them what they did rather than saying this is wrong or right, and invite them to enjoy the journey of these habits of mind, not kind of reach some perfect, become some perfect human. Which is where I say it's so important for us to be aware as to which habits of mind I want to develop. Because if I think I'm an ideal human being already, and then I want the child to just become me, then there is no fun. But the fun becomes when we are co-learning, co-discovering, co-enjoying this whole journey of habits of mind. When I keep giving examples of how I am lazy, how I am disrespectful, how I am insincere, how I am unfocused, how I am incompassionate, how I am impolite, and so on. And that's when children realize, okay, so it's not about being an adult, it's about being aware, being reflective about what am I doing. It's not about being right or wrong. So in some ways, I'm able to accept myself as being 50-50, and then I'm able to accept the child as being 50-50, and then we are all together. Which is where I wanted to sum up my skiing experience. My habit, my body's habit of how to move, how to do something was so ingrained in me. When I went to the skiing, I did everything wrong, because skiing is a different sport which requires the body to move in a different way, and the mind to think in a different way. So my habit of body and habit of mind betrayed me, and I realized that I'm possibly worse off than children, because they are far more open. Their bodies are more less conditioned actually, and my body is more conditioned. My mind is more conditioned. Their mind is less conditioned, and hence they are far more rapid learners as compared to my body and my mind. And it took me possibly 3 days more than them. So I was at a lag of 3 days, and I proudly said I'm a slow learner because I'm just taking more time to uncondition myself. But the whole idea was that we learned together, and that was the joy. Not that I need to be better than them or they need to be better than me. And when that happened, it was so much fun. Though I still was last among them. I must mention that. Okay, I think really overshot time. I think I need to be developing a better HOM of punctuality of finishing the session on time. Yeah, so I think this is a good time to pause. 11:11. Shall we pause here and say good night and leave you thinking, wondering about reflecting about your own habits of mind and what would you like to work with? Good night.